Well, welcome to my ScanGauge III Part 2. In my first video, I kind of went over the importance of this gauge, how it's incredibly important to keep our 8.1 Vortec from running lean in our WorkHorse chassis. So, and I kind of highlighted all the cool settings and stuff that I have set up on mine, what I like to monitor. So in this time, I'm going to just wipe out all my settings, start from scratch. I'm going to do a Wi-Fi update, get that done, and just kind of walk you through that and walk you through the setups and some of the different things you can do. Cool. So we'll imagine, because I talked to several of you after my first video came out last week, you went ahead and ordered one, and because I'll put a link to below this video also. So here's your ScanGauge OBD2 connector. Just go underneath the dash here, plug it up. All right, that'll bring it to life. ScanGauge III. Okay, accept that. There's a little tutorial if you want to watch that. Hey, I need to get my stylus. My big finger's not in the way so much. Say no. Okay, and another neat thing is you can control the brightness with just two fingers. I'm trying to do it in a way you can see it here. See, so I'm going to have to pull this down so the camera, it's getting kind of saturated. It's so bright. Okay. So there, at only 9. Now, it looks dark to me, but the camera makes it nice and bright, and I think the text will be a little bit more clear. Okay, so there's my gauge now. So we're going to go in here and wipe everything out. Let's see here. Let's go here to, go back to my settings or setup, advanced. Okay, so I'm going to reset mine to default. So we're going to wipe everything out. Reset all. Okay, so the very first thing you want to do is, see what happened? It just went, you got to change the sleep event because it goes to sleep on you pretty quick if you don't. So let me wake it back up and get back to that screen. Okay, so I got it woke back up. So the very first thing we want to do, hang on, get back to the right spot. We want to go to, setup advanced. And I want to go to sleep event and I want to change it to calm. That way it stays on. I think default is RPMs or whatever. And because it sees the engine's not running and it shuts itself off. You got calm, you got volts, RPM. I found calm works best for me. So, all right, our mode with our WorkHorse chassis is VPW. That's set by default. Update rate is normal. I would not know if I would choose fast or not. In fact, I've been using mine at the slow rate. The reason I did that, when I had the ScanGauge II, which is right here, I put two of them, I stacked them on one another. When I had them like on normal or fast rate, once upon a time I had an error on my computer. It came up on my digital screen on the speedometer, and it had something to do with like data rate. It's like the engine's computer was being overwhelmed with all the data being pulled from it. So I would suggest either put slow or normal. I don't know that I would choose fast. There's a slim possibility with all this extra data you could be getting so much you could possibly get an error message. I only seen it the one time, but I'm just putting that out there. It may never happen again. So, all right, let's put it ours on normal. Okay, we got the, let me see, I'm trying to make sure you can see what I've done here. Try not to block what I'm doing. All right, so sleep events, calm. Okay, let's do a Wi-Fi update. Now, this one's currently at 1.15. And for those of you who may have bought this earlier, you may have noticed your 5-speed transmission would not pick up automatically and show the correct temperature. That has been fixed as of version 1.18. So you see this is 1.15. If I did a scan right now, my 5-speed Allison would show 32 degrees regardless of what temperature it was. But after I do the update, it should show the correct temperature. So we're going to check for updates. Now at the moment, I've already got my phone in Wi-Fi, or not Wi-Fi. What's that? I've already got my phone in a hotspot mode. So there's my phone. Click on it. Let me put in the password. Okay. We're going to save credentials, retrieving version list. Remember this one was 1.15. Let's see what we're up to now. Okay, so there's 1.18. So we're going to skip up to 1.18 and download it. So that's another advantage over the ScanGauge III, where the ScanGauge II didn't have this ability. If there are any updates, we had to mail it in and get it back and all that stuff. And so as improvements come in the future, all you got to do is log in real quick and check for the latest version. So let's just wait for it here. Da, 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 da. There she goes. Download complete, restarting. Let me see where my setup is here. Okay, my brightness is still too bright. Let me go see that. I guess it reset that. Let me pull my brightness down. Yeah, I think about 9% had it pretty good. There it goes. As far as making it appear on the camera. Okay, so after my update, I went back in here into my advanced settings, and I noticed it went back to default to fast. So I'm gonna err on the side of caution. I'm gonna put it down to, I'll put it on normal setting. Okay, our sleep event stayed calm. There's our Wi-Fi updates. See, now our current version is now 1.18. We got that took care of. Compatibility. This is something new. That's what we're talking about, these updates. I don't remember seeing this before. Edit settings. So it says here, wake up on voltage. Remember, sometimes it goes to sleep on you. So you can change the settings here. So it says here, requires lower amount of battery voltage to wake the ScanGauge up. So if you have problems with yours falling asleep on you while you're trying to play with the settings, I guess that's where that's for. So that's a nice thing. Okay, so while we're still in the setup menu, there's things you do like change colors, and like this green is pretty cool. You put that on there and apply. Let's see what that looks like. Ooh, I don't know if I don't like that. That's too much. Okay, let's take that off. How did I do that? Oh, I know what it was. I want just the gauge color. How do I unselect? Oh, and undo. Undo. Use default. Okay, there we went. Okay, now we're back to, I clicked use default and apply the menu. So that's our default colors. So that changes everything. I don't want to do that. Let's just go gauge color, green, and see what that looks like. What do you think about that? It kind of stands out. It's pretty cool because it matches my fuel gauge. Might be a little bit bright for you guys on that camera. Let me pull the brightness down a little bit more. 7%. That looks pretty good. Looks really dark on my end, but on the camera it looks good. All right, what else we got in here? So that's the thing. You can get in here and play with all kinds of stuff with this display. You can play with the layout. You know, as far as what we got like 9 bits of data per screen. And remember, we got 3 screens to choose from. But you can change the layout 2 by 2. I like 3 by 3 because I like as much data as I can get. There's our monitors. We'll get back to that because I need to do a scan first. That's where we can monitor. In this section, this is where we can monitor all fuel trends, engine temperature, transmission temperature. So if anything gets out of range, the alarm will go off and we'll know about it. So let's get back here. Okay, so now let's do our first scan. All right. See, it's got we have no codes or anything in here, so that looks good. See, everything is green. That's in good shape. All right, so, but if you did have like a check engine light, you could hit clear and it would take it out for you. if you had any codes, they would be there. And I'll do that in a later video. I'll show you. I'll purposely set a code, and I'll purposely like create a lean or rich condition, and just kind of show you how the gauge reacts to that, so you'll know what to look for. Okay, so now we're going to get into the good stuff, which is called the Xgauge. That's where we really get the extra data that we're looking for. So go to More. We want to go to Xgauge, and we want to do an auto scan. And because it's General Motors, I know you'd think it'd be WorkHorse, but it's not. We choose General Motors. Select, start scan. This is digging into the computer, pulling out all the data that it can extract for us. Like getting our transmission temperature, fuel trims, mass airflow data, all this other stuff. So I'm saying this thing's incredibly powerful for what little money it is. And gives you some really good data that you may need on the road. Because it's more and more, it's coming up to us to take care of our vehicles and to troubleshoot. It's so difficult anymore to find anybody that can fix stuff for us. So we just kind of have to learn this stuff on our own. All right, so you can see all this cool stuff. Now there's some stuff we wouldn't like fuel temperature. There's really no fuel temperature gauge on this engine anywhere. Oil life, you see a lot of different stuff. So I'm just going to select everything. Select all and save. And there's a manual entry too, but at the moment I don't think there's anything we need to manual entry, but it may be in the future, you know, if there's some kind of other code that they realize they can pull out, then we might be able to put that in manually. Okay, let's get back to our main screen, gauge. Okay, so already, you see, I like this layout already. So short-term fuel trim, B1S1, so that's bank 1. So you know, in case you don't know, bank 1 is the 4 cylinders on the left-hand side of the engine. That's bank 1. Bank 2 are the 4 cylinders on the right-hand side of the engine. And that's the short term, and then of course there's the long term. And what we want to be more watching as we're cruising down the road is our long-term numbers. Remember, these should stay single digits. Unless you have a bank system installed, you could see some double digits in there, low 14s, 15s at the max. Remember, and this is percentage of fuel. So if it goes plus 25%, it's like maxed out. You got an extreme condition that needs to be resolved quickly, because that's when you really risk engine damage. You don't want that. So I like these 4 settings. I like the coolant temperature where it's at. Now I want to change this one. Let's change the, let's put the transmission temperature on that one. There it is. All right, so you just tap it, and I want to change it. So let's see, because see here's our standard gauges, and then here's our X gauges, the extra gauges that pulls out by doing a scan. But let's see what standard what we have here. Do we have? I'm looking for the transmission temperature. Okay, you see, let's see, I'm just cruising through, a lot of data. Okay, so under the standard, we do not have transmission temperature. And I want to know what my Allison transmission temperature is. So that's where we go over to the X gauge. So in the X gauge, there's our trans temperature. We'll select that, hit select. Okay, now we both have, see, coolant temperature is 50, transmission temperature is 50, which this engine hasn't been started for 4 days, so that makes sense. I like having open and closed loop, and you'll notice as you start using this gauge, we go closed loop at about 121 degrees. While we're talking about open and closed loop, I also run 180 degree thermostat, and I've seen people be concerned, well, they think, well, at 180 degrees you won't go closed loop, you'll be stuck in open loop. That's not true. We go closed loop pretty quick. And what that means is open and closed loop. When you're in open loop, the computer's more or less ignoring the O2 sensors. It has to wait till everything warms up. When the O2 sensors warm up and the coolant warms up, then the computer takes over. While you're in open loop, the computer's more going by a set of fuel tables that's preset. It looks at engine RPM, it looks at throttle position, and based on that criteria, it knows to inject so much fuel. But then once we get into closed loop, then the computer takes over, starts looking at engine temperatures. It looks at the O2 sensors and it gathers all that data to give us what they call it, stoichiometric. If I always screw that word up. Anyway, the computer's goal was always try to maintain a 14.7 to 1 air-fuel ratio. That's kind of the magic number we're looking for. So that's something else I want to add in here. So let's say I want to change this setting. I want to know what the air-fuel ratio is while we're driving. And so there it is. I clicked it one time. We're still under the Xgauge tab. There's AF ratio. Select that. So now, when the engine starts up and runs, you'll notice when it starts up cold, it'll be lower. It won't be 14.7. It may be 10 or 11 something, because it's running rich at that moment. And you'll also notice as you're driving, I'll normally see a 14.6.1 instead of a true 14.7, and I believe that's due to the alcohol content we have in our fuel. I've never seen 14.7. But you will notice as you're driving down the road, you'll see 14.7. But when you step on the gas to pass somebody, or you're climbing up a hill and you really got your foot in the pedal, you'll go from closed loop to open loop, and you'll watch your fuel ratio drop. It's going to go automatically go richer. So if you're in a passing mode, the computer says, okay, evidently we're climbing a hill. He's got his foot to the floor. We must be passing somebody. We need all the power we can get. So at that moment in time, it ignores the O2 sensors. It goes by the fuel tables and dumps extra fuel so we can get all the power we can get to get up and over that hill. So it's kind of interesting data you'll start learning and watching as you see these numbers. So another setting I like to see on my main screen is engine loads. Let's change that to engine load instead of engine RPM. Tap that. And let's see, where is engine load? I think that may be, is it on standard or Xgauge? It must be on standard. There it is, engine load. So there's engine load. Now, how I use engine load, I drive a lot with my cruise control on. And you'll notice as you're driving, I'm thinking when you get around 85, 86% engine load, that's about the time it's going to downshift. So if you're cruising along on cruise control and you're coming up to a hill, and you'll notice the engine load will start to raise and raise. Now, if you're on cruise control and you're looking to get the highest mileage, as you watch this, I hit the wrong button. As you watch your engine load increase, and I'll do a video of this when I'm driving it down the road, it'll make more sense. You'll be cruising down the road, maybe engine load is normally like 50%, but when you start getting, as you're climbing the hill, that engine load is going to increase, 80, 84, 85, 86, and you get about 87, it's going to downshift out of 5th to 4th gear. But if you want to get the most fuel economy, when you hit about 85, what I'll do, I'll just tap my cruise, the cruise control, I'll just tap that button, drop down 1 mile per hour, and it takes the engine load away, and it keeps me in the top gear. So it keeps me in overdrive longer. So in a lot of cases, I can stay in overdrive. The more you're in overdrive, the more better fuel economy you're going to get. So I kind of like watching engine load. This is sort of my default view. I like to watch, because that's just page 1. You guys still got page 2, come on, page 3, and let's play with the settings here. So on this page, I kind of get a little bit more geekier with geeky stuff, what you want to call it, more technical stuff. Let's see, let's get the engine RPM on there. Of course, we've already got coolant temp. We'll put ignition timing on there. Where's that at? Ignition timing. There it is. We'll put ignition timing. See, there's battery voltage. That's handy to see. Select that. Okay. Oh yeah, my mass airflow. That's important. So click this, and let me see. I can't remember if that's on the standard gauge. Yeah, overlooked it right there. It's under standard gauge, mass airflow. Okay. So now we got engine RPM, engine timing, battery voltage. Batteries get a little low, isn't it? Okay. Mass airflow, barometric pressure. Let's change it to that. Where is our barometric? Okay. Xgauge. See, Xgauge has the barometric pressure. I like doing that. So because the computer needs to know what barometric pressure is in order to adjust the fuel tables and stuff. So it's kind of interesting data. And then what do I start one on this gauge? Yeah, let's get manifold absolute pressure here. We've got barometric pressure. Where's the manifold at? maybe it's under standard. There it is, manifold pressure. Select that. Okay. And the manifold pressure, that's that little device right on top of our intake manifold. You'll see it's measuring the pressure and or vacuum inside the intake manifold and or lack of pressure, low pressure. So that way it knows when we're at idle. When we're at idle, the throttle plate is closed. We have a whole lot of vacuum. And when you go wide open throttle, you'll notice these numbers will change and drop. Okay, what else would be good information? How about oil pressure? Let's find that. Okay, well, here it is. Sometimes I can't see for looking. So under the X gauge, we have oil pressure. Select that. Okay, so now we got oil pressure. What other thing would be good for us? Okay, one more interesting setting would probably be engine misfires. So here we go. We've got total misfire count. Put that on there and select it. It's kind of interesting. I noticed when I was monitoring this, so if you had a bad spark plug wire, bad spark plug, anything that would cause a misfire, this thing will start giving you counts. So as a test, you can I can unplug one coil and it'll just rack them up, a couple hundred real quick, because it's detecting all those misfires. But I'm noticing on a trip I recently made, like once every hour I would get one random misfire, just out of the blue. Don't know what's that about, but just something I've been watching, something I can monitor, and something you can too once you get this gauge. Okay, so I guess that's plenty of information as far as how you can go about changing the layouts. It says page 1, page 2, page 3 is there. This is a lot of stuff I haven't really messed with yet, where you put in the size of your fuel tank, the last time you filled up, the miles in between, and it will help calculate how to drive your RV a little bit better and get better fuel economy. That's something I still need to play with. I haven't got that far yet. Okay, and now let's set up some monitors, because that's one of the most important things we have. If the engine overheats, if our fuel trims run too high, the transmission line blows and it starts to overheat the transmission, an alarm is going to go off and protect us. So let's click our little gear down here. Okay, there's a monitor. So you got your display tab, your layout tab, and monitors. Okay, so let's say monitor 1. What do we want to set here? Okay, so in the first box, I want long-term fuel trim bank 1. We'll select that. Okay, and I want to know if it ever goes double digits. So if it is above 10, I want an alarm to go off. So that's long-term fuel trims bank 1, left bank. All right, let's do the same thing over here. Go to long-term fuel trims bank 2, select that. Same way, if above 10, I want to know about it. Other things we can set. Okay, let's go engine temperature, coolant temperature. There it is. All right, so for me, if it goes over 220, I want to know about it. A good example, back last year, or earlier this year, when I was coming back from Florida, I noticed sitting at a stoplight, the alarm went off. It kind of shocked me. Why did it go off? Well, sitting there at idle, it got up to 220 degrees. And so what I found out is my fan clutch was starting to fail on me. So because normally our big viscous fan clutch in front of the radiator, or behind the radiator actually, it's designed at around 205. It should be locking up and spinning really fast, making all that noise. If you find it's not locking up at 205, going 210, 215, 220, then the clutch itself has been getting to wear out. And that'll start happening around, like for my case, around 70,000 miles. So if your RV's anywhere in that range, then you need to be on the lookout, because if your fan clutch goes completely out, then you risk, again, overheating your engine. It's one thing we don't want to do. Don't want to run lean. We don't want to overheat. So I've since put a new fan clutch on it, and all is good. So coolant temperature above 220, I want to know about it. That's saved. Okay, let's set the transmission temperature. Where is that at? Okay, so that's part of the Xgauges, because that's not a normal gauge. There it is, trans temperature. Select that. If it's above 200, I want to know. What else we got? Okay, how about oil pressure? And that is a slim possibility that could happen to you, and that's something for you to look at. And I plan on making a separate video on it. Are oil cooler lines that run from the oil filter up to the oil cooler. They're held in place only by a little plastic strap. That little plastic strap can fail. The oil cooler lines will begin to move, rub against the, I think it's the engine mounting bolt. There's a big bolt right there. It'll start to rub on those and rub a hole in it. And you'll just pump your oil right out of your engine. So you know that's going to make for a bad day. But once again, with this gauge, if that happened, you'd get an alarm if your oil pressure dropped. So let's find our oil pressure. That may be under standard. Engine load, fuel flow. Where's it at? Can't see if we're looking. No, wait a minute. Maybe it is Xgauge. Oil life. There it is. Engine oil pressure. Okay, so for this, I believe our light on the dash, it goes on once you drop below 5 psi. So I'm gonna set it to if it's below 10. So if we're below 10 psi, because you get your options here, so you can go if the number is below, equals to, or above, just depending on what kind of setting you're dealing with. So oil pressure, if it falls below 10, it will alarm. So now we've got oil pressure set. One last thing, because we have 6 options, is I like the total misfire count. So I will set that to, let's set it for 2. If I get more than, and I'm trying to remember, I don't know how often, I don't know if this is based on 60 seconds, if it's based on so many revolutions. That's something I'm not for sure of. There's a count there somewhere. I just don't know how it works. But I'll set that for 2. So if I get more than 2 misfires, I want to know about it. Like I said, I'd randomly get 1, like every hour as I was driving up to Illinois. It was kind of strange. All right, so that's pretty good. Oh, here's a little something. You can change the alert sound. So it's alert 3, don't like that. Alert 1, don't like. I like alert 2. Yeah. That gets your attention. So then your layout, display, I think we're getting everything in pretty good shape. All right, well, I guess next thing, let's start the engine up and we'll watch some of these numbers, see what happens. All right, well, I started up the engine. I'll show you how it acts now that it's running. Watch some of these numbers change. Okay. Let's get my little stylus. All right. It's a little bright, isn't it? Let me turn that down. That looks good. All right. Of course, you can see our short terms are pretty local. We're just sitting here idling. Not a whole lot's going on. But you'll notice when you're driving down the road, these numbers will settle in. They run about 3 and 4 on average. Remember the warning numbers of these down here, these long-term fuel trims. They get above 10, you need to see why. So coolant temp, because the engine's been sitting for several days. 79 transmission temp. And usually the transmission temp seems to run, 20 or 30 degrees below engine temperature, is what I've noticed. Because we're still in open loop, it'll take a while to close. It won't close till we get about 121. We've got an engine RPM, oil engine pressure is 45 psi. Okay, you see our temperature, we just got to 122 degrees. Now you'll see we're in closed loop. And then we got, of course, our engine RPM, engine timing, battery voltage. It's up now because it was getting low. Mass airflow. That's a neat test we can do. You can test the function of your mass airflow sensor, how it's working. Because at idle, this is normal between 8 and 10 at idle. Under wide open throttle, heavy load, you should see a minimum of about 220 grams per second. That's what this is measuring, grams of air per second flowing through. And if it's not detecting the error correctly, it's going to misreport that error to the computer, and you're going to run lean. So that's a really good number to pay attention to. And let me see, we go to oil pressure. It's warming up. It's dropped just a tick. Looking good, looking good. Okay, I'm giving it some RPMs here, like 1200 RPMs. Try to get some activity on the field trims. You see, the short terms are always active doing stuff, but it'll make more sense to you when I get out on the road and do some driving videos with it, and you'll see what's kind of normal. Well, I guess that'll wrap up tonight's video. So what I'll do on my next video, I'll go back in here and like introduce some vacuum leaks, create some scenarios to give you some bad numbers. So you know what bad numbers look like. Anyhow, I highly suggest picking up one of these. I got a link below this video. You can click on it. But again, thanks for watching. Y'all have a blessed day, and we'll see you next time. See you, bye.